This is the final word. Australia-India Daily Border Gavaskar Trophy in Perth. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. Day one of this series. The show's brought to you by Morris Blackburn, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. And also Visit Victoria, because that's what we think you should do. We're visiting Western Australia. There's an exchange program. Send some people the other way. Visit Victoria. It's a thing we believe in. Right, we have had an extremely busy day of Test cricket. And Adam, you are going to try to describe it for me in the space of 30 seconds.
Well, there was an exchange program of sorts with what happened on the field as well. India won the toss and batted, which is what you do at Perth Stadium, but they were bowled out inside 2 sessions for 150. Josh Hazlewood, 4 for 29, immaculate. A couple for Starc, who was just as good. 2 for Cummins, 2 for Marsh. No one got beyond 41 for India. Top scorer was the debutant Reddy. But then all hell broke loose in the final session. Jasprit Bumrah, a spell to die for, 3 for 7 in that, knocking over the top order. Came back later, got a 4th as well. Between times, Siraj picked up a wicket. Rana picked up a wicket on debut. The beauty of a ball to get rid of Travis Head. They're 7 for 67 at the close. What a day. Bloody hell.
What a wild day. A 17-wicket day. The start of the Lord's Test in 05. Was that a 17-wicket day?
I just had something sent through to me by my dear friend Jonathan Liu, who compared it to that. All out 190 and 7 for 87, I think, at the close. So there are echoes of what happened on day one at Lord's in 05, and that turned into, the great series of our time. Now, yes, pick your own adventure story on what team you wish to be in that scenario, but I was there that day at Lord's for the 17 wickets, sat in the Compton stand, and I was there today in the commentary box, and they both had a similar level of intensity about them. And I don't mean like grueling bat and ball contests, more about this, like, you couldn't take your eyes off the action. It was so much going on,
and it was just a clinic of fast bowling. And I know that people will look at this and they'll think, what the hell was going on with the pitch, right? And I was writing about that earlier, because you just assume it must have been absolutely monstrous. It wasn't monstrous. No. There was good pace, good bounce, good carry, and there was outstanding fast bowling. A completely new idea. Why do people get annoyed about when there are a lot of wickets on spinning pitches but not on bouncing pitches? Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about that. It was a clinic today from the Australians. First of all, Mitchell Starc was brilliant early. He had swing, he had pace, he had bounce. He gets Jayaswal playing a loose shot. Then he works over Devdutt Padikkal. First couple of overs he bowled to him, nearly crushed his toes a couple of times, beat the outside edge, had the ball doing all sorts. Cummins comes on after 7 overs to bowl first change, and he looks threatening every ball. Hazlewood comes back for a second spell after bowling just 3 and comes back to replace Starc, and then he's working over also of Padikkal. Well, it only took 4 or 5 balls, but he just figured him out. He just goes, okay, I'm gonna bowl fuller than I have to everyone else. I'm going to bowl a couple in straight at the stumps to get him to start driving the ball, and then I'm going to move it just a little bit wider, and it's going to have a cross seam action, and it's going to deck away from him, and he's going to chase it, and he's going to nick it, and he did. Like, it was such an intelligent figuring out of a player who's only playing his second Test match. Tough job, first job. Yeah,
total clockwork, as you described there from Hazlewood. If you wanted to be critical of his first mini spell, the 3 overs, is that he was bowling, what sometimes gets referred to as a pretty length. I know Mohammad Shami's often criticised of this, but I think that was him finding his way against KL Rahul. And when he saw the opportunity that had been opened up by Mitchell Starc with Padikkal, he's like, well, no, I will go full up. I will build that pressure outside the line of the off stump, and eventually I'll get my reward bowling across the left-hander. It was super stuff, and it set the tone. Hazlewood's second spell, it was a monstrous one. I mean, and both of Starc's cracks before lunch were outstanding as well. They both had 8 overs, 3 maidens, 2 for 10 at lunch, or 2 for 12 at lunch. They had identical figures, and they were as good as each other. This is the Australian bowling attack who stayed together for all 7 Test matches last summer. They won 6 of them. They should have won 7 of them, apart from that, the way they botched the Brisbane effort on the final day with the chase. It was never an issue taking 20 wickets. And Hazlewood last summer, including the New Zealand Test matches, took 35 at 15, having missed the 2 previous home summers through injury. So you've got to this stage of his career where he's actually better than ever before. And maybe, just maybe, having had a couple of quieter years in his early 30s, it might extend his career.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be one of those. I know Peter Siddle said that around the same age when he missed about a year with a stress fracture. He's like, it might help me at the back end of my career. He's still bowling beautifully with Victoria at age 40. So there may or may not be something in that. But yeah, the Australian quicks were brilliant. Just on the pitch, like, I understand there is a desire to go, well, there's criticism of spinning tracks, therefore 17 wickets in a day, 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. It did move off the seam today, but that's a story as much as anything about the ball. The Kookaburra ball with the reinforced seam and the extra lacquer, which has been their 4th summer, I reckon. 21-22 was the first summer where they changed to Kookaburra, where it developed, because they were a bit worried about the balance between bat and ball in Australia. That was a pitch problem which they were trying to offset with a ball solution. At the same time as the balls have gotten better, have increased the balance, the pitches have got more sporting at the same time.
Okay.
And Perth's pitch wasn't a green top, make no mistake. I was out there this morning. It was. I spoke to a couple of the Australian players in the middle. They expected it was going to be flatter than last year. But it was just the case of a very hard pitch on day one, which is always going to give a little bit more, combined with a ball that was doing plenty, and that applied for both teams today, and they made the most of it. But it wasn't like it was shooting through the top or doing what it did at Brisbane a couple of years ago when South Africa were there, leaving the ball marks, which made it impossible to bat on. You just had a combination of excellent fast bowling, enough happening with the ball, and a day one pitch all in concert.
Yeah, no divots. It looked absolutely very hard, and there was nothing happening.
It was as hard as what Isaac McDonald said it was going to be. That was the impression of the players this morning.
Right. So KL Rahul, I thought, batted bloody well during the first session. Left the ball really well, was disciplined, didn't go completely into his shell, still played some aggressive shots against Cummins, particularly when he pitched up. The outfield was slow. There were a lot of balls pulling up for three. He did manage to find a boundary two here or there and try to keep things moving, and then got unlucky, I thought, with the dismissal. Starc bowls a good ball to him that has to beat him and burst past him, and they appeal. It's not given. There's a nick comes up on the sound wave graph when Australia sent it upstairs, but the vision isn't conclusive because the camera doesn't get that bit of the bat, but it also doesn't actually show the exact corner of the bat that the ball's beating. That's kind of out of frame because of the angle to which KL Rahul's turned, so you can't actually see any if there's a gap or not, or if it's close enough that you could assume contact, and you also can't see that the bat's clipping the pad. And so that spike that came up wasn't sharp enough to be a bat spike, but I also think the point of contact wasn't on the screen, and I know the third umpires have that thing that they kind of have to give it if there's any movement on the graph, but I think if there's not a picture to go along with that, I think that's a different interpretation, or should be a different interpretation. That's why it seemed wrong to me.
Yeah, look, it bolsters the case for specialist third umpires who spend their life working in interpreting audio waves, really. I felt for Richard Illingworth because I don't think he could have done anything other than what he did. When the spike lines up along with the bat and the ball, I watched the replay back from a long shot not long before we've recorded this podcast, actually, and the bat hits the pad quite a long time after the ball passes the edge. So I think that if anything, the flaw was not running it through and seeing the second spike. That might have been the equivalent that might have been the equivalent of the second shooter behind the grassy knoll.
Right.
Now, but in this case, I think there was still Lee Harvey Oswald in the book depository. Like there still was the first. In other words, I think that even with that, I don't see a world where Illingworth can really give it not out, but I understand the frustration. It's an imperfect process. No one's claiming otherwise, which is why they have to have relatively objective rules, I think, in place, because if you make it too subjective with an already imperfect process, that's when it lends itself to wild interpretation, and I think they're trying to avoid that. But look, there's always areas to improve, and that'll be reviewed like everything else is. And we saw one recently with Rishabh at Mumbai, which people got angry about, when it was very clear to me anyway that the bat hit the pad the same time as the ball passed the edge, and that meant that it made it even more likely that it was going to be given out than today's. That's the practice. That's how it works. That's what umpires are directed to do. So, I don't think there's a global conspiracy against KL Rahul. I think this is what third umpires do, 98% of the time, because that's what they're directed to do. And on the 2% of times they don't, they get barreled into for doing it the other way. So anyway, it's a tough one.
So 4 down before lunch, and then they bring Mitch Marsh on after lunch, which seemed a little odd. I thought, well, the big Greeks have had a break. Why are they going with Mitch Marsh here? He didn't look as proppy as he did when he was warming up during the one-day series in England. He looked a bit better, but still pretty heavy-footed, and still a bit ginger in his follow-through. But he got the ball to jump, and he did it multiple times. He went for 2 runs off his first 3 overs, and soon enough he's got a couple of wickets. He nicks off Dhruv Jurel, who'd looked pretty good, played a couple of nice shots. Then he nicks off Washington Sundar, the left-hander, with a ball that jumps even more. Suddenly they're 6 down. They've got Rishabh Pant still there, but he's got to try to pull things back together with Nitish Kumar Reddy, and he does a good job of that. Those two do put on a few, and Reddy's the one who goes on to 41. Pant makes 37 before Cummins gets in. But that Marsh intervention was where it went from tricky to India for almost almost impossible.
Well, it leaves them at 6 for 73. And look, I don't think Sundar should be playing at that ball. It's back in the length.
He should be playing in this Test match. How have they picked him ahead of Ashwin and Jadeja?
I reckon they've done that thing that Test teams sometimes do when they come to Australia. They try and play a bit of 4D chess and they forget the fundamentals. Like, fundamentally, Ashwin is one of the greatest bowlers ever. Yeah. And fundamentally, Jadeja is the best all-rounder in the world. How you could find a scenario. I know they've had how do you solve a problem like Ashwin and Jadeja in the Sina countries?
Sure.
And that's vexed them. Yep. In this instance, by playing neither of them. I mean, Sundar might come out and bowl the house down.
He might.
But I feel like this was, maybe overthinking the situation.
Height, he's taller, more bounce, but Ashwin gets bounce.
Well, one theory put to me by a colleague today is that he spins it less than Ashwin, and thus on a pitch they expect might rag. But I don't think we anticipated this was going to rag necessarily. So it's all a bit confusing and muddled to me. Just on Mitch Marsh, a little bit like it is with Cummins. Cummins didn't play a multi-day game in the build-up to this after basically 3 months off. He trusted himself and trusted his own body well enough to prepare how he saw fit. I think the same thing's going on with Marsh. It was a bit of a red herring, him not bowling in those Shield games, I think. I reckon this was the plan all along, that he was a bit fitter than he was letting on, that he had a bit more in the tank, because he ended up bowling a 6-over spell, I'm pretty sure. That wouldn't have been anticipated when we woke up this morning. I think you and I probably would have said Labuschagne's more likely to bowl medium pace if required.
We said that in the
Mitchell
preview.
Marsh. Yeah, we may have. But the thing with Mitch Marsh is, since he changed the way that he bowled and stopped trying to bowl quick, he bowled up in the mid-140s back in 2015, 2016. Since he evolved into a swing bowler, which was best shown at the Oval in 2019, he's always a handful when the ball's moving around, and this was the exact kind of day for that. So he bowled about 2 overs in the middle at lunch, and then he got warmed up, and big boy, of course, he's got to take some time to get his limbs working. But when he took that second wicket, it was Drew Petrie, wasn't it, when he beat Essendon in that final? Tom the Tank, whatever. Frank the Tank. That reminded me of that when he was racing down. One of the many times that Essendon have failed to win a final in the last 20 years.
Love the motorbikes out here. We're recording this in the middle of Perth, if you're wondering why the sound things have worked out. We recorded a beautiful episode at the stadium earlier and the audio didn't work, so here we are. We're doing it again.
We did it live for a couple of Final Word listeners as well.
Yeah.
So they're the only people who've heard that. Well, that and a number of...
Maybe real combat listening is you can only win if you heard the secret episode that won't get released.
Well, we also got crashed by a couple of types who really wanted our attention and wanted to be in shot and that kind of thing. So probably more relaxed than we were the first time with those dickheads
probably
staring at
less
us.
likely to get punched by some dude who's just standing
I was ready
there
for that, by the way.
swaying.
I thought there was half a chance he was going to punch you or me. And I'm like, well, what do we do here? And my instinct was that I'm feeling up for it.
Put it on TikTok. Get famous.
I'm feeling up for it. That's what I was thinking.
I was ready. I was like, I think I've got the upper hand in terms of just being able to maintain my balance.
Haven't had 12 years.
In any case, Rishabh Pant, that bit was fun. I mean, he couldn't go full Rishabh Pant. He was trying to play within himself. He played out some maidens. He blocked here and there. Then he'd charge down and try to slog Cummins over mid-off and slash him over the slips.
Gosh, the slap over mid-off was exciting, wasn't it? It was like, that's right. Rishabh Pant's playing in this Test match. How brilliant. And how good to have him back.
Then he played the forward roll, the one that we love, where he rolls outside his off stump and ends up going over his shoulder and scoops the ball over his other shoulder over fine leg. Got heaps on that one. And Reddy played a couple of good shots where he lifted, uppercut one away that was very close.
How about the one that he played? How about the one that he played? It was his first boundary, I reckon, through over mid-off,
and then over cover.
When looking to turn into the onside, it was Dhoni-esque. He was trying to flick into the onside, but the power of his wrists was such that he was able to almost correct and not go the whole way through with it and lump it right at the middle of the blade with real force over mid-off. I think if Reddy plays all 5 Test matches, he's going to become a bit of a cult hero because he'll come off and make 80 one day. And look,
we nickname him Ruffin. Sound asleep, rough and ready.
I think that Reddy, but I also feel the same way about Harshit Rana. Like, he was fucking brilliant. The way he ran in and had them beating both edges straight away, right in the middle of that Bumrah spell, which we'll come to all of this in a sec, but just to deal with the 2 debutants. And then to, I think in his 3rd over, after Travis Head gave him some tap, to come back and bend back his off stump with one of the balls it'll be one of the balls of the summer, certainly the ball of the day.
Yep.
I think they've found, I admire Test 1 at Perth going, we're going to pick 2 guys we just feel like they are right for this challenge. Because the easy, more conservative thing to have done would have, they had a number of options, didn't they? Especially when it came to using...
Could have been Prasidh Krishna with the bounce.
Krishna, that's right. We all thought that because of Perth, but, they went for someone else.
I just had this feeling, and I should have said it on the show yesterday, I just thought, I bet you they will pick Harshit Rana because this is an Indian touring team and that's what they do.
Yeah,
They've got a 22-year-old who's played no first-class cricket. Sure, throw him in.
When we woke up this morning, Baz said to me, he goes, we're sharing a room, Brett, and he goes, oh yeah, Washington's playing. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
You were texting Ashwin for like hours the other night.
I know.
You were pretty sure
you up?
We were pretty sure Ash was playing.
What are you thinking about?
Anyway.
Thinking about playing.
Anyway,
Yeah, no,
it doesn't matter.
He didn't play. He's not playing, and he's probably fuming. And he and Jadeja are probably sitting there super shitty on the bench. So I'm not sure it's great man management from the Gautam Gambhir camp to go, well, we've got Washington Sundar. Maybe we want to play the left arm spinner. Okay, we already have a left arm spinner. Oh, do we? Okay. The one that we already have, is he a better bowler? Yes. Is he a better batter? Yes. Is he a better fielder? Yes. Okay, let's pick the other guy. It's very Darryl Strawberry. Are you better than me? I've never met you, but yes. And look, I hope Washington Sundar bowls the house down, but he may not. Anyway, then we come to Bumrah. Bumrah's stand-in captain, right? He's won the toss. He's elected to bat. They've been bowled out for 150. He's probably fucking shitty. He's probably pissed, and why wouldn't he be? And he comes out and he just bowls one of those spells. And just for a second, I thought he wasn't going to. There's sort of the one down the leg side that flicks away. McSweeney's leg glance, and then there was some sort of width, and it's edged down in through the cordon and so on. McSweeney gets to 10, and then Bumrah, he bowls one of those ones that he bowls from so wide of the crease that somehow unerringly comes in at middle stump, nails him LBW. He gets one to jump at Labuschagne that's dropped by Kohli at slip. Another one to jump at Khawaja, left-hander now, going the other way, caught by Kohli at slip. And then he gets Steve Smith first ball, blows his pad off, Steve Smith wandering off like Odysseus to the offside, as he loves to do. And suddenly they're 3 for 19, and India are right in it.
Look, Bumrah's one of the best fast bowlers ever. And he's having one of the great years. I know that he didn't succeed against New Zealand a few weeks ago. Seldom does. He's got a really weird outlier record against New Zealand. They're his bogey team. But he won India that T20 World Cup. That spell he bowled at Vizag to England when they were in the Test match. The 6-wicket spell, the ball he bowled to Ollie Pope, who made 190 the week before, right? And then rocks up here on day one and performs that way after they've been bowled out for 150. That's leadership, that's skill, but it's also all the quirks of Bumrah. It's the release point that we fixate on. It's the amount of late movement he generates from wide of the crease. It's how he has literally the extra yard because of the release point as well.
And the extra bounce. He just gets it to kick.
I remember watching him bowl at Perth in 2018, remembering that he wasn't a massive part of the 2020-2021 win, but he was a huge part of 18-19. He took 6 for 33 at the
junior
MCG.
There. He barely played any Test cricket.
Yeah, he made his debut in the January of 2018 in South Africa and played in England in 18. But 18-19, he effectively took over the leadership of that attack.
The slower ball to Sean Marsh at the MCG, landing it on his
top. I remember watching. I took a photo of Kohli when I was in the member stand. I went around there to take a picture, and Kohli doffed his cap to Bumrah as a sign of deference. So, you are very special. And today, I enjoyed the way he spoke at his press conference yesterday. It was like, I'm just going to embrace this for what it is. I've got a chance to captain India in a Test match again. I feel like I'm able to do this well. I'm going to embrace the tough times, and that's probably the thing today, right? He lived his words yesterday about how Test cricket will supply you many tough challenges, and he stepped up at the same time as he was able to express his profound skill. And I think we're going to look back in sort of 10 or 20 years and go, that guy was someone who was truly special, not just like your best bowler of his generation in the team, but more like like maybe he's the best fast bowler India's ever produced.
And the hits just kept coming from there because he gets those 3. Harsha Rana bowls the one to Travis Head that angles in and moves away and takes that off stump.
What a ball.
And then Siraj, who had influenced the last series, influences this series, gets Marsh with the ball that decks away and it's edged into the cordon, very well held by KL Rahul, low to the ground, survives the third umpire examination.
Great decision
fingers
from the third
on
umpire.
the ground.
Those are the ones that can go the other way, but the presence to know that, the way that's meant to be interpreted, it was definitely out.
Ball was scooped
just like
up.
Gill was out at the Oval last year with Cameron Green.
And then Labuschagne, who was 2 off about 50 balls at this point, and who I have some sympathy for because I think he was just trying to hang in there while they were being torn apart. But he couldn't put any pressure on, he couldn't score. And late in the day, Siraj gets one angling into him, so dead, like stone dead when it hits him in front.
And then challenged it, and it was hitting middle and leg halfway up, and I described it on commentary as a tortured innings. And I just feel like I can't tell you why. I don't understand how you can go from being how you can be such a dominant force at home. He was averaging mid-70s at home. I mean, his average at Perth's over 100, but he put that to one side for the time being.
Because he made a double century against West Indies.
Yeah, he's made 300s here, I think. But ignoring even that being an outlier, across a decent slab of time, probably 2.5 years, this guy was averaging in the 70s. You don't do that. People don't typically achieve that kind of thing unless they are very special, right? And he's gone from being very special to a guy who it feels like it's more than a conventional loss of form. It feels like, again, I can't explain it, but it feels deeper than that, because he was the guy, the old Andy Zaltzman busy index, who would rank so highly on that. It wasn't the boundaries he hit, it was the way he would turn the strike over in a Joe Root-esque manner, where he would reach 20 and you would look up, cliched as it is, and how the fuck's he 20 already? That was Labuschagne through that whole stretch of time. Now, and this is not his first rodeo on not being able to get out of a hole that he digs himself early on, he was being hit he got hit twice in the box, one in the mid-drift by Bumrah. Yeah. Rana was working him over as well. I mean, it was rugged for him, and he never actually looked to transfer pressure back onto India. I take your point that he was trying to hang in there, but I think that Damien Fleming on our commentary put it best. He's like, when you got a batter playing that way, as a bowler, you're thinking, well, this is great. I'm not going to be hit anyway. I'll trust my best ball to get this player out when that best ball
and
arrives.
I can just keep bowling the same thing, and if one's slightly off, it's not going to cost me.
It's improbable it's going to cost me or the team, and that's the situation that Labuschagne found himself in today.
Compared to the way Carey comes in and plays, where he drives through cover, very early in the innings, which no one else is doing. He sort of flicks one over the cordon. He's being proactive because he's in great nick and has been since March, and was really good in England in those one days where he saved Australia a couple of times when an innings was falling apart.
And he was the one who was suffering for form last year. He couldn't hit it off the square. So there's a volatility about batting, and batters who've done it at the top level talk about how difficult it can be when you can't get anywhere near close to your ceiling. I do wonder, and huge advocate for Marnus Labuschagne. Any long-term listener to our show will know I'm not one of these that beats up on him necessarily in the way that other people do. I feel like they might need to take him out of the firing line. I don't think they should sack him, drop him, jettison him to shield cricket for the rest of his life. I do think that they might reach a point soon where it's like you're in such bad nick that you need to go away to a yoga retreat or do some crocheting or sing kumbaya, whatever it is. Go spend some time with your family, probably more to the point in Labuschagne's case.
Start a kombucha brewery.
Whatever it takes just to kind of not be necessarily in the game, because I can imagine that he'll be probably sitting in his room right now having his head done in as much as anyone is frustrated by his batting at the moment.
So Cummins comes out, gets nicked off by Bumrah, last little captain-on-captain action before stumps Australia, 7 down. So Carey and Starc still there, could pull it out of the fire. We've seen that happen. We've seen teams get to 200 plus from here, or they could be all out for 80 tomorrow. I guess the key thing is they're still in the game if they're all out for 80. I think the whacker, as in the association, not the ground, will be the one sweating on it, because they got their best ever crowd today, and we've given them a lot of shit for their crowds over the years. Today. But they got 31,000
and a half, I think,
in today, which was good. The stadium still never looks full. I just want to see it look full. I hope it fills up for the Ashes next year, because it would be such a sight to see to have it full for Test cricket. But it was a good crowd to come in.
Get down to an Eagles game, mate. Get a bit of Eagle rock.
Luckily, Damien Oliver wasn't doing anything today. Otherwise, if he'd had a barbecue on, half that crowd wouldn't have been here.
What was the other thing last year? Club cricket.
That's
club
tomorrow.
Cricket. That's tomorrow. Is the crowd excuse for tomorrow is club cricket.
Club cricket. Yeah. So we've got that all lined up. I had an email today from someone who said Perth. It's a working day, and Perth is a very hard-working city. I'm like, everywhere's a hard-working city, buddy. Like, this is not a harder working city than anywhere else. I'm sorry. Anyway, good crowd today is the point, and it would be devastating financially if they only get 20 overs on Sunday because the game finishes. And they refund everybody and they lose half their weekend take.
Well, remember the Brisbane test a couple of years ago, which sped up on day 2. Now, I don't think this will, by the way. The evidence of this Perth pitch in recent years is that, well, actually, no, it's not. I was going to say that I was thinking more about the whacker than I was Perth Stadium. Actually, here, it's gotten harder to bat as the test has moved on because of the cracks.
That's
but there are no cracks.
We could be done early on.
But I was out there. There are no cracks. I mean, at least the close-ups we were getting late in the day. And it's cold. By Perth standards, it's probably 18, 19 degrees right now. And usually, last year, I was talking to my wife who was with me for the Perth test last year. I'm like, it's chilly. She's like, it was 30 degrees every night last year when we were here. So different kind of energy there. Just on Steve Smith before we move off, I think it's just worth noting, anyone can get a first baller from Jasprit Bumrah when he blows your pad off. But it just seems to be that these things.
It's always when he's moving across.
These things are just happening to Steve Smith more and more.
Well, leg before wicket's happening to him more and more.
Absolutely. In that most purple of patches where he was averaging 75 for an eon,
you couldn't get him out.
Leg before. I remember everyone would say, well, eventually he'll fall across his stumps, and he never did.
But he is now.
But he is now. So again,
It's
the
like
Smith decline's a bit
Paul
different.
Jennings story where like you get to you eat the meal, but you have a magic pen and you write someone's name and all of the calories go onto them, and the kid like makes the English captain really fat during the Ashes. I think it must have been a Mike Gatting era thing. He just piles all the pounds onto the English skipper, but then he doesn't realise that the curse is that you can do this for a certain number of years, but eventually it all comes back to you.
Right.
So Steve Smith's getting all his LBWs now that he wasn't getting when he had the magic LBW pen and he was writing them onto somebody else's name.
How's that not your intro to your written piece tonight?
I don't know, it just came to me.
Maybe
It's
that's
not.
tomorrow. There
I
you
just
go.
thought of it.
We're just doing intros on the fly here.
Paul Jennings. Okay, before we get to the Hall of Fame, please tell me about Morris Blackburn and their sponsoring the show.
Oh, with enormous pleasure. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a brief breather, and then on the other side of the break, we'll come back with the Hall of Fame, and I'll tell you all about Morris Blackburn. Final word, it's the Day 1 Border Gavaskar show. It is brought to you in partnership with Morris Blackburn Lawyers, the number one firm in Australia for... What did we describe it before? Plaintiffs. I forgot the word.
It's been a
long week. I've slept like 10 hours since I left England on Monday night. Number one plaintiff lawyer, going since 1919, 1 year after the war, the Great War, a great law firm
Wasn't
emerged.
that great, honestly?
It wasn't at all. I said that like the Great War, you know.
Why it was great till they got to be great.
Well, here's the thing. So the principle with Morris Blackburn is that you don't need to be wealthy. You don't need to be rich to seek legal representation.
You don't have to be rich to rule their world.
There you go. And they've been serving on behalf of working people since 1919. They've got 30 offices around the country, but of course you can access them even if an office isn't near you. They work in everything ranging from class actions through to... I mean, they've worked on asbestos cases and everything in between. I mean, the point here is that they are the law firm you can pick up the phone to and can guarantee they will provide you the kind of support that means that you won't feel stressed out. They've got some of the best and most experienced lawyers in the country working for them, and you got the benefit of that as well. We're proud to be in partnership with Morris Blackburn Lawyers throughout the course of this series and indeed this summer. So check them out in our show notes if you ever need legal representation.
All right, Hall of Fame. We didn't mention the catch. It's off Harshit Rana, isn't it? The duel, the double catch, the Sweeney Labuschagne.
Yeah, so that was one of two opportunities to mention Chris Tabaret on commentary today. But the parry from McSweeney, who took a screamer in the gully. His first touch in Test cricket was a really assured catch off Jaiswal to start the day. And then to have the one that he parried up with the left hand, moving to his left. But Labuschagne, to his immense credit here, his eyes did not leave the ball. The easy thing to do there is to like lose your feet or lose control of what he was attuned to the opportunity that existed there for him to get the rebound, and what do you know, he was able to make it to the contest and get his hand under the ball. Superb fielding.
I loved the synchronised bit that they didn't intend, that they both stood up raising their right fist in celebration in exactly the same motion, and it genuinely looked like the EA cricket bit in 2002 where just like two characters share the same animation module. It just kicks in for two characters on the field. Whoop, they went. And it was from front on, it looked absolutely identical. It was weird.
Beautiful. I love it. I love the look, like a boy band all raising their hands together at the end of a song or something like that. The Australian Slips Cordon boy band coming your way next winter or something when they've got their next downtime.
A Hall of Fame for our podcasting colleague Ian Higgins from The Great Cricketer, who I was talking to when Steve Smith walked out to the middle and he just leaned in and went, Steve Smith, Bumrah, first bowler, first ball, and bang, and it happened. And like Ian's face was just, he was so happy with himself. I don't think he was wishing Steve Smith ill, but you know, you've got to like it when you call it.
Loved the pant ramp, loved the ready shots I mentioned already. The Uzi drop the sun at Perth Stadium, for whatever reason, this is not the first time it's caused someone to drop a catch, and where we often record, the sun's in our eye, and anyway. Khawaja lost the ball in the sun. It sometimes happens. It was funny, and then only to take the catch 3 balls later.
Yeah, exactly the same way. You don't want to double drop. That's a thing that we learned a long time ago.
Yeah, as teenagers, and Coley dropped one too, which is unusual in the cordon.
Oh, it's not really. He's probably, I think he's the worst slipper to have fielded for so many games in the slips.
Really?
Like he's not. He drops so many in the slips.
Felt for Coley today.
He's not, and he cannot be removed.
Just want to say, I know it's not Hall of Fame, but we didn't mention Virat earlier. I felt for him because I want him to do well. I want him to find a way through this, but 61 innings since the pandemic started for an average of 32 or something like that. A couple of hundreds. He did have a revival in 2023. He batted magnificently in the 2024 T20 World Cup, player of the final, etc., etc. But a little bit like Smith, it's like He's the one that gets worked over. It came with a plan to jump on the front foot and to bat out of his crease as the balls were being bowled. Hazlewood detected that. He adjusted his length and got him with the ball back of a length. I mean, they would have been chuffed when that ball went to first slip. They would have known that's, again, a plan coming together from a high-class pace attack.
From a guy who made a really good 100 here in 2018. All right, we've gone long, but, 17-wicket day, and we might only get 2 episodes out of this match. So let's see how, we've got to take our opportunities.
We do, and on the way out, I want to tell you their other partner on the show throughout the summer is Seabus Super, celebrating their 40th birthday, like I am as well. Seabussuper.com.au, get your superannuation sorted out this summer. They're outstanding. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance.
This has been the final word. Australia, India Daily. We'll be back on day 2, of course, from Perth. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. We'll see you later.
Good night.